I believe in no God, no invisible man in the sky. I know that my beliefs have elevated me just as I know that the things I have rejected would have destroyed me. But the city, it's collapsing before my eyes. Have I become so convinced by my own beliefs that I have stopped seeing the truth?
A man chooses, a slave obeys. This quote by the tyrannous businessman Andrew Ryan suggests that there are two types of people in this world: those who decide to walk their own path and those who meekly follow the trail left by others. He doesn't mean that some are born to be men and some are born to be slaves, but by refusing to obey, one becomes a man, separating himself from the herd through the exercising of his free will. And although Andrew Ryan is a hypocrite, you can't ignore the fact that Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the most influential philosophers of all time, said something pretty similar back in 1885. Bioshock is a first-person shooter / immersive sim video game developed by Irrational Games and released in 2007. As a video game, it was a critical success, winning IGN's PC Game of the Year and scoring highly on every review platform out there. As a work of art, it is seminal.
A man builds, Parasite asks, where's my share?
Now would you kindly sit down and let me explain to you what Bioshock says about our world and what it could say about ourselves. The game begins with a first-person perspective of the main character, Jack, on a flight, smoking a cigarette and looking at a labelled gift from his parents. After a moment, we cut to the wreckage of a plane crash in the ocean and you, as Jack, swim to a small lighthouse, seemingly as the only survivor. Inside is a huge statue, a banner reading "No gods or kings, only man," and a quote from Andrew Ryan, the face of the statue. "In what country is there a place for people like me?" Immediately, Ryan seems to you a hypocrite. The statue and the banner completely contradict each other. You enter a bathysphere, a submarine-like device, and it takes you down to an underwater city named Rapture. Andrew Ryan, the leader of this place, speaks to you through a pre-recorded clip.
Is a man not entitled to the sweat of his brow? No, says the man in Washington, it belongs to the poor. No, says the man in the Vatican, it belongs to God. No, says the man in Moscow, it belongs to everyone. I rejected those answers.
At your destination, you witness a mutant-looking woman killing a man right outside the bathysphere, and a man called Atlas comes over the radio to explain the situation.
I don't know how you survived that plane crash, but I've never been one to question Providence. I'm Atlas, and I aim to keep you alive.
In the beginning, you don't learn much, not the real stuff, not the real secrets of Rapture, but you do keep hearing that one name, Ryan. And before I talk about plasmids, or splicers, or little sisters, or big daddies, or Atlas, or Fontaine, or Cohen, or Tenenbaum, or Steinman, or smugglers, or religion, or capitalism, or free will, I should really talk about him. Rapture was built by Andrew Ryan because he dreamed of a world where a man was entitled to the sweat of his own brow. He felt his efforts as a businessman were being unjustly punished by the systems in place in the real world. Taxes and labor laws and what have you. As a child, Ryan witnessed the Russian Revolution of 1917 and became completely ideologically opposed to socialism when he saw his family members gunned down by the Bolsheviks. After moving to America, he found large amounts of oil under his property and became a prosperous industrialist. He enjoyed the capitalist system of America, but still found it contaminated with the parasites of government and regulation and altruism. You see, Ryan believes in objectivism, a philosophical concept coined by Russian writer Ayn Rand, which is all about self-interest. An objectivist believes only in reality. Anything proposed to be outside of existence or dependent on human knowledge is false, and therefore the only thing to orientate life and morality around is reality. Therefore, Rand solves the classic David Hume is-ought problem with the idea of life itself. Basically, many have struggled with the idea of moral truths because, as stated by Hume in A Treatise on Human Nature, there is no way to get from a statement about what is to what ought to be, from fact to value judgment, because there is always a logical leap involved. Hume says that there will always be that second is statement, stopping this from being a true moral truth. Ayn Rand would say that because we are alive, the is statement, then what we ought to do is simply sustain that truth, which itself is the most paramount. There are no kings with with divine rights, no gods who command our faith, no existential moral truths, only people here in the physical realm who will pursue their own self-interest through effort and ability. This and other aspects of objectivism manifest in a close focus on survival, self-interest, a rejection of altruism, and perhaps most famously, capitalism. Now, when I say Andrew Ryan followed Rand's philosophy, I'm not speaking hypothetically. His name is literally an anagram for hers. Some people even call Bioshock a spiritual successor to her book Atlas Shrugged. In concept alone, of course, Bioshock is actually, well written. In Atlas Shrugged, all the primary movers of society, creatives, industrialists, scientists, etc., start striking because of the direction of American and global society, infuriated by the parasites trying to hijack what they have earned for themselves. They disappear from the world and go to live in Galt's Gulch. Galt's Gulch, that's horrible. I'm sure those familiar with Bioshock, if you're not already aware, are starting to see the similarities here. Rapture is Galt's Gulch, a utopia for the smartest and richest people in the world, except Ryan didn't build Rapture in the Colorado Rockies, he built it at the bottom of the ocean. This is most of the context for Rapture itself. It's Ryan's free society, a place where innovation is boundless and the market is unregulated, letting the population exercise their free will as they please in science, art, and industry. In concept, it's very close to being a capitalist anarchy with no true governance, which Ryan views as a scourge. Instead, Rapture is supposed to be ruled by the great chain of industry linked by individuals. The harder each one of them works and pursues self-interest, the harder they pull on the chain and the tighter and stronger it becomes. This was the concept that Rapture was founded on in 1946. Look out for yourself and the chain will hold strong. Try pulling for two or more, or none at all, and fall behind. In the real world, people who fell behind would be parasites, leeching off government welfare or Christian kindness to survive. In Rapture, no one will help you. Yet, it seems when our character arrives in Rapture in 1960, it has been engulfed in civil war since New Year's 1958. And partway into the game, we see this, a man strung up next to enormous statues of the Great Chain. It almost looks like he's been crucified by the chain itself. What does this mean about the vision of freedom Ryan imagined? What does it mean about free will in general? What has happened? Well, the early years of Rapture were successful. There was innovation, scientific advancement, and prosperity. It was very almost the utopia that Ryan had imagined, and he just sat back and let the unregulated free market form. However, as is natural with a capitalist system, divisions emerged along class lines, and elitism, greed, and poverty started to spread. Rapture was completely cut off from the surface, with Ryan intent on enforcing this, yet the same problems were emerging. It was only when a doctor named Bridget Tenenbaum made a startling discovery that things started to pick up again. She found a brand new species of sea slug containing this substance called Adam, which could do remarkable things to a human's genetic code. She also found that the best way to cultivate Adam was to place these sea slugs inside the stomachs of young girls.
Even with those things implanted in their bellies, they are still children. They play and sing. Sometimes they look at me and they don't stop. Sometimes they smile.
With help from businessman Frank Fontaine, Tenenbaum used orphan girls for this purpose, and soon plasmids hit the market, able to give the population extraordinary abilities. But after a brief respite where productivity returned, the instability and addictiveness of Adam soon forced Rapture back into decline. Frank Fontaine took advantage of this by creating a huge smuggling network from the surface, becoming richer and richer, and eventually so powerful that Ryan called for his arrest. Fontaine was killed in a shootout, but shortly after, a civil war emerged between Ryan and freedom fighter Atlas. 2 years in, this is when Jack enters Rapture, and we see the product of Ryan's utopian dream and his objectivist ideology. Okay, that was a very fast rundown of the story, but don't worry, later on I'll be diving into each of these different elements. Also, I've already waited way too long to shout out this video. I watched it when I was already fairly deep into my research, but it's such a brilliant analysis and it gave me a lot of inspiration, and I highly recommend you watch it after watching this one. Once Atlas guides Jack out of the bathysphere, a few things happen in the Welcome Pavilion. First, we inject a plasmid into our chain-tattooed wrists, giving us our first genetic ability, these sick-ass lightning bolts. These plasmids seem to be commercially sold and are available in vending machines. Second, we encounter a little sister, a girl who we're told is filled with Adam. Atlas implores us to kill the little sister and harvest her Adam, whilst Tenenbaum begs us to spare her. Us sane players all took the same decision. Thirdly, we encounter quite a few splicers, the people whose bodies and minds have deteriorated from overuse of plasmids and who are now under the control of Andrew Ryan. Ryan, despite all the freedom he stood for, has become an unflinching dictator in control of an army of splicers, and he now intends to have you killed. It's not exactly the free utopia that he once imagined. The question of how justified Ryan's betrayal of his own philosophy isn't as easy as it seems on the surface. After all, it was this commitment to his philosophy which allowed Fontaine's empire to grow so big and so powerful as Ryan refused to regulate the market, and it's this same commitment that in the end gets him killed. Spoiler alert. On our journey through Rapture, we, as Jack, have to face a number of threats which show what can happen in a world obsessed with free will, freedom, and objectivism, before we reach our final confrontation with Ryan, where all these themes come together. But first, the Doctor,
They don't have the will to greatness.
the Botanist,
God did not plant the seeds of this Arcadia. I did.
and the Artist.
Let me see it.
Dr. J.S. Steinman holds the key to getting to Neptune's bounty and Atlas's family. So, of course, Atlas asks if we would kindly enter the Doctor's bloody lair and promptly find and kill him. Steinman was a plastic surgeon before Rapture's decline, the best in the business, but like a lot of folks there, the plasmids took a toll on his mental state. He soon became obsessed with his artistry, turning his customers into Picasso-like creations, all, in his mind, at the behest of the goddess Aphrodite.
What can I do with this one, Aphrodite? She won't stay still!
Painted around the medical pavilion where he resides are messages like this one: Adam denies us any excuse for not being beautiful. What Steinman literally means when he writes this is that he believes that Adam's ability to rewrite genetic code makes it genuinely immoral to not be beautiful in Rapture. When we meet him, Steinman is furious that the girls he has disfigured cannot meet his increasingly high standards of beauty, even calling one too symmetrical.
I want to make them beautiful, but they always turn out wrong! That one too fat! This one too tall! This one too symmetrical!
The Aphrodite he imagines does not behave kindly. She behaves much like the personification of a mindless consumerist culture, insisting that everyone be as beautiful as her and setting treatments for this. But she is not real. She is in Steinman's head, so all his patients fall victim to being unable to live up to her. That Leadhead video I mentioned earlier describes Steinman as a manifestation of the dangers of combining art and science. I say that it seems to be one of the outcomes of Ayn Rand's objectivist policy of extreme self-interest. If people are comfortable in their own skin or with the beauty products that they have, then it's of course in the beauty industry's interest to fabricate a new standard, a new normal, a ghostly Aphrodite who all will fall short of. This Aphrodite is there for the investors, for the Steinmans, not for the consumers. Pharmaceutical companies are among the richest in the world, and the strength of their influence is often overlooked. I've done a lot of research into this for my degree, and I do strongly believe they've done a lot of good. But let's just say if a drug company believed that they could make money off a mental illness, then they'd sell it like crazy. And if they believed that they couldn't, they'd bury it. Aphrodite lurks in our society, and like in Rapture, she is not a product of beauty, but of self-interest. If she ever were to show her face, it would be ugly as all hell. Side note here, this video's not just going to be a takedown of capitalism. This coercive ideology I mentioned in the title is not capitalism. I'm criticizing the extremes of it right now, but don't worry, there will be some different criticism later. After escaping from the medical pavilion, you encounter the chained up smuggler outside of Neptune's bounty. Just this image alone indicates some very interesting lore and themes, because if we look down to the smuggler's... One sec. Hello? After some trials and tribulations, including Ryan's murder of Atlas's family and our objective switching to hunting him down, we make it out of Neptune's bounty and enter Arcadia, a beautiful section of Rapture which contains most of its vegetation and produces the oxygen. Ryan has been tracking you throughout the game, trying to squash you like the CIA/KGB/MI6 rat that you are, but Arcadia is where he turns it up a notch. He poisons the entire section to deprive you and in the process everyone else in Rapture of oxygen.
But I think Ryan has just killed Arcadia.
As he does this, he tells you a story. Back on the surface, Ryan once bought a huge forest, but because of various reasons, the parasites of America insisted that it would be turned into a national park, and Congress approved this decision. We don't know the details of this, we don't know whether it was a long-term process, we don't know if the government intended to purchase the land from him, which they often did, but Ryan was outraged and he burnt it to the ground. This is his mindset. Rather than let Rapture be taken by Atlas and you and therefore have it stray from his strict ideology of freedom, he's prepared to burn down the forest. I wouldn't say this is admirable, but it's definitely committed. I do, however, wonder if Ryan is so sure about sticking to his ideology in this case, how can he be content with controlling the splicers using pheromones and arresting Fontaine and nationalizing his business, Fontaine's Futuristics, and taking the actions of a dictator when that is everything he's against? He is desperately opposed to you imposing your ideology on Rapture, yet he's abandoned his own completely. Ryan preached free reign and free will for all, but I'm starting to think he only meant free will for all as long as it didn't clash with his. After all, he began the city by making oxygen cost money to people, taking advantage of Rapture's botanist Julie Langford and her research, and making a profit for himself. Is that him following an objectivist policy of self-interest, or just imposing a tax like the parasitic governments that he so hates? Speaking of Langford, it is by assisting her with creating the Lazarus Vector, a special chemical solution, that we managed to stop the trees in Arcadia from dying. But in an attempt to stop this from happening, Ryan claims that deployment of the Lazarus Vector is entirely owned by Ryan Industries and murders Langford with the words, "Ownership is civilization." I've thought for quite a while about what this could mean. In an objectivist sense, all ownership is morally a product of one's own efforts. Nothing is inherent, no one owns anything by right, so what Ryan is saying here is that advancement in civilization is only possible if everything is up for grabs. Yet, does this not make him a hypocrite? Arcadia and the Lazarus Vector are products of Langford's efforts, not Ryan's, and he only took control of them because he's the most powerful man in Rapture. He created the place. Langford states in an audio diary that she argued with Ryan about making Arcadia open only to paying customers, but stopped when she remembered who signs her paychecks. He told her, should a farmer not be able to sell his food, implying that he is the farmer and that he sowed the seeds for the invention of the Lazarus Vector. I suppose he also invented the oil he found under his house in America. I suppose the people who can't earn enough to eat are the ones who are the parasites. In a perfectly objectivist world, practice such as Ryan hijacking Langford's creations and gaining a monopoly on the oxygen market would be quote-unquote regulated by the business community. But no one's going to boycott Arcadia, no one's going to stand up to Ryan, just like in the real world no one could boycott Google or Pfizer or Amazon. He is the governmental body that he once feared, a man torn between providing opportunity for competition and greedily guzzling the profits for himself. Perhaps in a way this is consistent with his philosophy. After all, he views altruism as the greatest lie ever told, and he certainly isn't helping anyone but himself with these actions. But he's refusing to allow the market to grow properly in more ways than just with Arcadia, which is meant to be the core tenet of his philosophy: free will, free market, free competition. I know Rapture fell apart in 1958, but I have a feeling that Ryan never knew how to make this unregulated, ungoverned society work. The question I'm left with is this: is Rapture proof that objectivism cannot work, or is it just a complete misrepresentation of the ideology? And I'm starting to think, why not both? Again, this sounds like another capitalism bad tangent, but please bear with me. I should also mention that Ryan handpicked the people who would be coming from the surface to the city, which is a bit ironic considering the name Rapture. In certain sects of Christianity, the Rapture is an event where Jesus will descend to earth and take the faithful with him up to heaven. In Ryan's mind, he is Christ, choosing those who are most faithful to his ideology. Maybe he saw Steinman's growing obsession with advancing the field of cosmetic surgery as purely self-interested and therefore valuable, and Langford's work during World War II on starving the Japanese armies as making her particularly suited to life in Rapture. Things that might seem unhinged to me or you, but scream untapped potential to Ryan. No one is more relevant to this idea than our next figure, the artist. After leaving Arcadia, we are suddenly cut off in communication with Atlas and Ryan and are cornered by one Sander Cohen.
That's better.
Cohen was a good friend of Ryan on the surface, and a well-known but polarizing artist. Down in Rapture, to quote Atlas, he has become a sadistic Section 8. Before we can advance to Hephaestus, Cohen forces us to enter Fort Frolic and kill his 4 disciples, who have all turned on him, and take photos of their dead bodies.
Welcome to Fort Frolic.
Ryan gave Cohen jurisdiction over Fort Frolic back in the beginning of Rapture, and it was transformed into a glamorous area where people could enjoy the theatre, shopping, music, and even casinos and strip clubs. It's got this very cool neon fancy art deco design, which I can only imagine would have been painfully ironic to those suffering in poverty in Rapture. Now, despite what one might think, objectivism isn't opposed to art at all. In fact, it doesn't even limit its acceptance to just objective realism. It's most aligned with romantic realism. Ayn Rand believed that art should be based in reality, but represent rational human ideas of potential and achievement, presenting reality as it could be. Yet, one of Ryan's closest allies and the man in charge of Rapture's cultural hub views art as this. Murder victims encased in plaster. In a twisted way, Cohen's interpretation of art after he's descended into madness is a more apt description of the human potential in Rapture. Just like in the real world, the consumerism of Fort Frolic might have distracted from and evaded the deep-seated issues eating away at the underbelly of the city. And the romantic realist art, looking forward to advancement and potential, might have given those of the 1%ers who weren't completely aligned with Ryan's vision a nagging, uncanny feeling, like the one you get while eating a bucket of popcorn and watching the latest $300 million blockbuster as people across the globe are being starved to death. Cohen's mutilated bodies, while being a disgusting and disturbing sight, give a more honest look at the future of Rapture. Another key component of the Fort Frolic level is how it plays with free will. After aiding Cohen in killing his disciples and placing their photos on an extravagant sculpture in the atrium, Cohen reveals himself to you and doesn't try to kill you. In fact, you have the clear option to just leave. This is weird. Unlike the choice to rescue or harvest the Little Sisters, there's no in-game UI confirming this decision. It feels strangely authentic, like the first real choice you've made all game. And come to think of it, as soon as you begin this quest, that little arrow indicating your objective disappears. And it's all right at the moment. Hello?
Would you kindly put me on speaker?
Moving on, we head to the bathysphere and make our way to Hephaestus. If you're somehow not aware of the ending of Bioshock, I'm going to lay out the rest of the story for you right now. So, about those Little Sisters that I mentioned before. They were the product of Dr. Tenenbaum's work using girls from Frank Fontaine's orphanage. But when Rapture fell and Fontaine's Futuristics was nationalized, they needed a way to get more Adam into the Little Sisters. A man called Dr. Suchong developed a mental conditioning method so that the girls would see dead splicers as angels and make the process of extracting Adam from them appealing.
It's alright. I know he'll be an angel soon.
Now, the build-up to the Civil War began in September 1958 when Ryan had Fontaine killed. Previously, Ryan had been fine with letting Fontaine's Futuristics grow as it abided by his free market society, much to the chagrin of his closest allies. But Fontaine's smuggling business had become so huge that when Ryan failed to shut it down legally, he then introduced the death penalty for these activities. After Fontaine's death, Ryan nationalized his business and took control of the Little Sisters program, completely betraying his own philosophy. This is likely when Suchong started the conditioning on the sisters. However, Ryan was unaware that Tenenbaum, Fontaine and Suchong had been conditioning a young boy named Jack since around 1956. A young boy who just so happened to be the son of Andrew Ryan and his mistress, Jasmine Jolene. She had sold the baby for money, giving Fontaine his ace in the hole, someone who could override all the systems in Rapture which only responded to Ryan's DNA. In 1958, just before his death, Fontaine sent this boy up to the surface where he remained until a certain hijacked plane ride in 1960. Now, the man who took over Fontaine's seedling rebellion was Atlas, a freedom fighter for the poor and your guide through Rapture. Even if they agreed with what he was saying, people always mistrusted Fontaine, but they believed in Atlas. Despite Ryan locking up him and his organization in a makeshift prison in Fontaine's department store, the revolution remained strong, and the Civil War began on New Year's 1958 when Atlas launched a terrorist attack on a masquerade ball thrown by Ryan for Rapture's richest citizens. Both sides took more and more plasmids, evolving into this superpowered self-destructive arms race. The city degraded, and then in 1960, Jack's plane, your plane, is brought down just above Rapture. Yes, the character you play as is only 3 or 4 years old, but Suchong's experiments have given him the body of a fully grown man. His memories of a family and parents and childhood and life were all false, and he is activated and controlled by one phrase.
Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
This is what Ryan explains to you when you finally reach his office in Hephaestus, casually putting golf balls as if nothing is wrong. As if he didn't alter the plasmid so that he could control the population, as if he didn't abandon the free market and nationalize Fontaine's businesses, as if he didn't completely abandon his ideology.
In the end, what separates a man from a slave? Money? Power? No. A man chooses. A slave obeys.
Some see Ryan's final moments as a kind of atonement, a self-punishment, because he knows he's abandoned his objectivist policy and he wants to return to its most important tenet, free will, by dying on his own terms.
A man chooses. A slave obeys. Obey!
He uses the mind control phrase, "would you kindly," to force you to beat him to death, letting a slave kill him as payment for him enslaving others. But as much as I love Leadhead's video, this conclusion doesn't ring true to me. Ryan is triumphant in his final moments and, in my opinion, continues the philosophy he's been displaying all game. Not objectivism, but a blind commitment to egoism and self-interest. This video by The Vile Eye claims Ryan instead embodies Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, which isn't an overly well-defined concept, but basically states that the driving force for all people is power. Indeed, Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, or the Superman, aligns quite well to Ryan, a man who pursues his own self-interest through actions and defines value by physical achievement rather than any kind of otherworldly salvation. Nietzsche separates such supermen from the herd, those who conform to societal norms and lack individuality and self-interest. Just like Ryan resented the herd of parasites on the surface, those who conform to the values of the church or the government or of socialism. Honestly, Nietzsche and Schopenhauer and Max Stirner and Ayn Rand are all relevant to Ryan in some way, and I don't know enough about egoism to define exactly which philosopher's ideas he adheres to. In this moment, as his son beats him to death, he is protecting his own free will, as he has done all his life. That is the core tenet of his philosophy. He believes in the free market and reason, reality, sure, but Ryan prioritizes self-interest over everything and at all costs, a value that Ayn Rand never shared. From the bronze statue in the beginning, from every action he takes in the game, from the name of Rapture itself, we can see the truth. Ryan is a hypocrite, and this only became exposed because of one man. Frank Fontaine. Fontaine was a seedy businessman on the surface, and in Rapture he becomes the same, funding and managing production of plasmids with Fontaine's futuristics, while smuggling goods from the surface with Fontaine's fisheries. He also ran Fontaine's Home for the Poor and of course the Little Sister orphanages. But Fontaine himself knew that people mistrusted him, so he created an alias.
Nice work, Bio.
Yes, Fontaine has been controlling you and the plot for the entire game. He seemed to embody the opposite of Ryan's objectivism by helping out the poor of Rapture, but preaching collectivism is not the same as practicing it.
These sad saps. They come to Rapture thinking they're gonna be captains of industry. But they all forget that somebody's gotta scrub the toilets. What an angle they gave me. I hand these mugs a cot and a bowl of soup, and they give me their lives. Who needs an army when I got Fontaine's Home for the Poor?
Under the surface, he is just like Ryan. There's no doubt in my mind that if his plan had worked and he took control of Rapture, nothing would change from the poor and he would continue to abuse his power. Even that smuggler strung up by Ryan outside Neptune's bounty was a tool of Fontaine. By having him smuggle religious texts, Fontaine intended to incite the anger of the community when Ryan inevitably enforced his death penalty legislation. Like Jack, the smuggler was simply a tool of powerful men in Rapture. It's funny, after all this talk of ideology, both Ryan and Fontaine turn out to be liars. They practice the most coercive form of ideology, the hypocritical form, the opaque form which promises one thing but delivers another, which makes the world so confusing for most but so profitable for the few. Although Bioshock itself does criticize multiple ideologies, this reveal doesn't necessarily criticize one type or another, but those who would take advantage of them for personal gain, of capitalism and socialism, of objectivism and collectivism.
Only the little people pay taxes, right?
We will make America affordable again.
The word affordability is a Democrat scam.
It is the hand of the worker that builds the future. It is the spirit of labor that sustains the nation. Now I ask you, will you stand with me as I have stood with you?
One might initially follow them for the ideology that they preach, but end up supporting an institution which represents something entirely different. And then one might go on supporting them because that support is now baked into your identity. After all, Hemingway said, all things wicked start from an innocence. And where does this leave Jack, who is, in a way, a product of both Fontaine and Ryan? This twist makes the whole game very meta. That quest icon above your head directing you to your objective now makes in-game sense because that's the mind control working on you. When it disappeared during the Sander Cohen section, that was because Fontaine had lost contact with you, and it led to the only real choice in the whole game. When Ryan tells Jack that he has no free will, he's also talking directly to you, the player. Fontaine has no intention of letting you live once Ryan is dead and he has control of Rapture. You only survive because you are saved by the little sisters who you've been helping, or if you're a sociopath, killing, all game. Dr. Tenenbaum then says that she will help free you from mind control so that you can go after Fontaine. It's quite somber when you find yourself down in that layer, realizing that Jack's entire existence has always been at the mercy of either Ryan or Fontaine at one moment or another. Maybe for a second it's freeing, but then suddenly you're at the mercy of Tenenbaum's instructions instead of Fontaine's, wordlessly going along with her plan. You even turn yourself into one of the big daddies, a process which will do permanent damage to your body. Fontaine himself points out the irony in this just before you face him in a big showdown. The final battle with Fontaine is almost the opposite of our confrontation with Ryan. He doesn't accept his death, but hops himself up on Adam and fights until his very last breath. I find it strangely formulaic for Bioshock. I know we already had our deep philosophical climax, but this just feels like such a standard boss fight for such a non-standard game. And then, as the little sisters crawl over Fontaine and finish the fight, I start to think about free will again. I should say that I personally strongly believe in determinism, as in the idea that humans have no free will, essentially. So take everything I say here with a pinch of salt. I find there are two sections to Bioshock. The first part where we're under Fontaine's control, and the second part where we're technically under no one's control but following Tenenbaum's instructions and hunting down Fontaine. The first part is a representation of living within a society. You have free reign for the most part, but your actions are restricted and affected by the structural, political and cultural dynamics, specifically influenced by powerful people like Ryan and Fontaine. However, once we break the mind control, we remain under the control of someone. And the game ending with a big generic boss fight feels like a nod to the fact that you were never going to be able to choose. The finale was laid out from the start. This second part, perhaps, is a representation of life in general. Even if we were able to escape the mind control that forces us down a certain path in life, i.e. societal norms, we are still at the whim of the universal cause and effect and end up at the same foregone conclusion. If not a bit macabre, it does frame Ryan's commitment to free will as privileged. Ryan had all the choices in the world after he found that oil, whereas someone like Jack and many people in the real world get barely any. Being only concerned with his objective self, Ryan fails to see that. You are a slave because you obey. There is no nuance to that perspective, no real reason that him having you kill him would leave him triumphant. Yet you're left with the feeling that he has indeed won, that he's a noble captain going down with his ship for a righteous cause. He truly believes that's all that matters, as long as he is the man and you are the slave, the parasite. It seems that he's become lost in his ideology, unflinchingly concerned only with semantics and terminology. And as the game goes on, it implies that his victory wasn't so triumphant. life continues and control continues, power continues. I find that as you play on, despite the impact of that scene with Ryan, even he becomes lost in the maze of ambition and ideology in Rapture. Fontaine acts just as arrogantly as Ryan did, and Tenenbaum is still ordering you around. And so when the credits roll at the end of the game, you realize that even Ryan committed an act of obedience dressed up in the illusion of choice, because that was how he was programmed. That's the significance of having Jack be a silent protagonist. When the characters speak to Jack, they speak to you. And Ryan's commitment to sustaining his own free will becomes mightily ironic. You step away and think, this man thought that he committed these actions out of free will, but that was just the developer's choice, not his. Some people might leave it at that. Some people might wonder, am I, Ryan, believing so strongly in my own free will that it becomes ironic? But even if that is true, Albert Camus once said, "You will never be able to experience everything. So please do poetical justice to your soul and simply experience yourself." I will leave that up to interpretation. I do wonder if Jack ever escaped control. I don't believe he ever fully did. I believe the developers wanted their determinist message to spread it outside the Rapture microcosm. I also haven't played Bioshock 2 or Bioshock Infinite, so is he in those? I don't know. I haven't played him. I will eventually though. But I hope at some point he finally felt free enough to accept the notions of choice and freedom. Because, you know, that's how you live. I think now I've recorded this video, I might call a friend. Maybe I'll bake a cake. No, maybe I'll just go for a walk. Yeah, a nice walk because that's my choice. Yeah, it's definitely my choice.